livid. Harry has met someone who is his age, with whom he is in love, and who is in love with him. And Meghan found out about it after she discovered texts on Harry's.
So hard.
They really hate each other now, and they cannot hide it anymore.
She was the villain.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
Harry was not in love with Meghan Markle.
He was madly in love. The veil is now lifting.
Lady C finally exposes Harry's secret new girlfriend. Meghan is furious. Lady C has finally dropped the absolute mother of all bombshells, and if the whispers echoing through the gated compounds of Montecito are to be believed, the great royal fairy tale didn't just stumble, it detonated in full view of everyone watching. For months the commentators dropped subtle hints, dissecting every icy glance, every awkward pause, and every mile of distance between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle during what was politely spun as a professional pivot. But now, Lady Colin Campbell has gone straight for the jugular, claiming Prince Harry has found himself a new woman, someone roughly his own age who resides right in the environs of Montecito, and that Meghan discovered the entire betrayal after finding secret text messages on her husband's phone. The reaction across the globe hasn't been shock or disbelief, but a collective roar of laughter and people declaring they saw this coming from a mile away. Meghan is reportedly furious, not just over the personal humiliation, but because the illusion of absolute control she built so carefully is shattering into 1,000 pieces. When you look at the breadcrumbs scattered across the past year, from solo transatlantic flights to separate business empires, the writing was always on the wall. Tonight, we are going deep into Lady C's explosive exposures, the secret texts that triggered the ultimate meltdown, and why this scandal marks the absolute point of no return for Montecito. To truly understand why Lady Colin Campbell's latest revelation has sent absolute shockwaves through the royal watching community, you have to look closely at the exact phrasing she used, and the razor-sharp legal tightrope she is walking. Lady C didn't just toss out a casual allegation. She framed it with the lethal precision of someone who knows precisely what happens when you cross the Sussex legal machine. She described this mystery presence in Harry's life as a girl, a woman, a girlfriend, or a friend, pointedly stopping short of an explicit declaration of an affair purely for legal reasons, while leaving zero doubt about the emotional reality behind it. According to her account, this individual doesn't live in some far-off corner of the world where Harry sneaks off during overseas trips. She resides right in the environs of Montecito or nearby, practically in their own backyard. People in local circles have allegedly spotted them together, away from the blinding glare of tabloid lenses, in quiet spaces where Harry can briefly remember what it feels like to exist without a production crew, a branding consultant, or a PR apparatus dictating his every breath. The detail that truly sent Meghan into an absolute tailspin, however, was the discovery of the text messages. For years, the public narrative presented Harry as a man utterly devoted to his wife, a prince who surrendered his birthright, his royal status, his military appointments, his friends, and his homeland, all to protect the woman he loved. But when Meghan reportedly went through his phone and discovered a trail of private exchanges with another woman, exchanges that reflected warmth, understanding, and a deep emotional connection, the illusion of the untouchable Hollywood romance evaporated overnight. Meghan's rage isn't merely about personal betrayal. It is about the catastrophic disruption to her brand. The Duchess of Sussex has spent the last several years building a multi-million-dollar image centered around being the ultimate savior, the guiding star who rescued Prince Harry from the oppressive clutches of the British monarchy. To have that carefully curated image punctured by the oldest story in the book, a husband looking outside the marriage for comfort, is a PR nightmare of apocalyptic proportions for her. Lady C's claim suggests that Harry hasn't just drifted emotionally. He has actively sought out a sanctuary with someone who doesn't demand that he perform for cameras, stage pap walks, or pitch commercial deals to streaming executives. For a man who has repeatedly complained about feeling trapped, first in the palace and then in the gilded cage of California lifestyle branding, finding someone who offers simple, unvarnished companionship is the ultimate act of rebellion. And that is precisely why Meghan is furious. She recognizes that once a man like Harry tastes genuine freedom from a controlling dynamic, no amount of public statements, vow renewals or strategic photo ops can ever force him back into the mold. The hypocrisy of the entire situation is what makes the public howl with laughter. For years, Meghan's camp leaked story after story about how independent, empowered, and modernized their partnership was. Yet the moment Harry establishes an independent emotional connection, the entire house of cards collapses in a flurry of leaked outrage and frantic damage control. Anonymous sources close to the situation claim the atmosphere inside the Montecito mansion has turned toxic, with heated confrontations echoing through the empty hallways and staff members treading on eggshells. The once celebrated power couple who claimed they were taking on the world together are now reportedly communicating through intermediaries within their own home. It is a stunning fall from grace for a duo that once demanded global reverence. The narrative of the mistreated royal who found his ultimate soulmate in California was already wearing thin, but this revelation acts as the definitive nail in the coffin. People who once defended them blindly are now openly questioning how much of their public romance was ever genuine, and how much was simply a scripted reality show designed to keep streaming contracts lucrative. The sheer desperation to control the narrative is evident in the flurry of distraction stories being pushed out by publicists. Suddenly, we see sudden announcements about new lifestyle products, unexpected charity visits, and vague promises of upcoming media projects, all designed to bury the headline that Harry's attention has drifted elsewhere. But the public isn't buying it anymore. The contrast between the polished, the fallout from these allegations becomes even clearer when you place Lady C's claims alongside the long, tragic history of Prince Harry's romantic life, particularly when you compare his current situation to the women he loved before Meghan came into the frame. Long before the Netflix docuseries, the podcast deals, and the awkward red carpet appearances, Harry was madly in love with Chelsea Davy, a free-spirited blonde from Zimbabwe who couldn't have cared less about palace protocols, tiaras, or royal titles. They spent nearly 7 years together on and off, and as those close to Harry back then have often noted, Chelsea was the only woman with whom Harry looked genuinely relaxed, happy, and unburdened. She loved Harry the man, not Harry the prince, and certainly not Harry the commercial asset. But as Harry himself confessed under oath in a London courtroom, the relentless intrusion of the press, the tracking devices, the leaked arguments, and the toxic paranoia created by tabloid coverage ultimately poisoned that relationship until Chelsea simply couldn't take the fishbowl existence any longer. She chose her sanity and freedom, leaving Harry heartbroken and convinced that no normal woman would ever tolerate the life he was forced to live. Then came Cressida Bonas, another vibrant, independent woman who took one look at the royal circus and ran for the hills for the exact same reasons. Enter Meghan Markle, a woman who didn't run from the cameras, but rather embraced them with open arms. Where Chelsea and Cressida saw a nightmare of privacy invasion, Meghan saw a global platform. Harry mistakenly believed he was finding a savior who could navigate the fame machine with him, but as observers like Lady C have relentlessly pointed out, he essentially traded the palace machinery for a Hollywood ringmaster who turned his personal trauma into commercial entertainment. Chelsea Davy sitting silently in the pews at St. George's Chapel in 2018 watching Harry marry Meghan was the ultimate foreshadowing. She watched the man who once claimed he wanted to escape the circus sign up for an even bigger, more relentless media circus in California. Fast forward to today, and the tragic irony of Harry's situation is staring everyone in the face. The mystery woman currently linked to Harry isn't a high-profile Hollywood star, an influencer seeking a brand partnership, or an executive looking for royalty points. She is described as someone grounded, age-appropriate, and content to exist outside the spotlight, qualities that echo the very things Harry lost when Chelsea Davy walked out of his life. Harry's intense homesickness and deep regret over burning bridges with his family in the UK have been widely documented, and finding solace in a partner who doesn't treat every moment as a content opportunity is the clearest signal yet that he is desperately trying to reclaim the piece of himself he gave away. The psychological toll of this transformation cannot be overstated. Friends who knew Harry decades ago have publicly remarked that the warm, funny, larking about prince they grew up with has been replaced by a nervous, guarded figure who scans the room for approval before daring to speak. He traded his country, his military brothers, his royal standing, and his family for a promise of total freedom, only to realize that his new freedom came with a non-disclosure agreement, a camera crew following his every move, and a spouse who reportedly micromanages his speeches and meetings. The contrast between his past and present is brutal. With Chelsea, he was barefoot in the African bush, laughing without a care in the world. With Meghan, he is standing awkwardly on red carpets, holding bags and looking like a man serving a self-imposed life sentence. It is no wonder that the public reaction to the rumor of another woman is less about moral condemnation and more about a universal recognition of a man reaching his breaking point. People see a prince who finally realized that the fairy tale he was sold was actually a carefully constructed business plan where he was merely a supporting actor. What makes Lady C's exposure so devastatingly believable to the general public is that they don't exist in a vacuum. They fit seamlessly into a year-long trail of receipts that prove this marriage has been operating as two separate businesses for a very long time. You don't need access to private text messages to see that Harry and Meghan have been living increasingly separate lives across different continents, schedules, and social spheres. Look at their calendars over the past 12 months alone. While Meghan has been flying solo to high-profile events in Geneva, attending galas in Chicago, making appearances at museum fundraisers, and attempting to launch her lifestyle brand, Harry has been conspicuously absent. In fact, tabloid counts noted periods where the two were not seen together publicly for over 40 consecutive days. A staggering metric for a couple whose entire public brand was once predicated on being joined at the hip. Meanwhile, Harry has been making repeated solo trips back to the United Kingdom, attempting to mend broken fences, participate in charity endeavors like Invictus, and navigate his ongoing legal battles entirely on his own terms. Meghan refuses to set foot on British soil, while Harry clearly aches for his homeland, creating a geographic, cultural, and emotional gulf that no amount of polished PR spin can bridge. The public fractures have only grown more severe and bizarre over time. Remember the infamous Paris incident, where Meghan posted a video reclining in the back seat of a luxury car with her feet up, cruising along the exact stretch of riverbank near the underpass where Princess Diana tragically lost her life? That clip caused absolute outrage across the globe, with commentators and royal watchers branding it tone-deaf, grotesque, and deeply insensitive to her husband's deepest, most traumatic wound. For a man who sat on international television declaring that street chases in New York gave him severe anxiety and reminded him instantly of his mother's death, having his own wife shoot a glamorous shoe advertisement on the very site of that tragic loss showed a staggering level of emotional disconnect between them. Either she genuinely had no clue where she was in the one city where his mother passed away, or she knew full well and posted it for engagement anyway. Neither explanation offers a comforting look into the state of their dynamic. They split their commercial identity into neat, sanitized little spreadsheets long before these text messages ever surfaced. Her Netflix lifestyle content and jam brand over here, his Invictus Games and international polo projects over there. Everyone politely labeled it a professional separation, a mature business decision to broaden their individual portfolios. But in reality, it was the formalization of an emotional divorce. You do not file a business divorce from the person you are still head over heels in love with. Critics and biographers have openly questioned how much longer Harry could tolerate being micromanaged, talked over in corporate strategy meetings, and reduced to a silent partner in his own existence. When you add all these pieces together, the separate transatlantic trips, the opposing personal goals, the tone-deaf public stunts, and the overwhelming isolation Harry has experienced in California, the emergence of secret texts and a mystery woman isn't a surprise plot twist. It is the inevitable mathematical outcome of a relationship that was already completely hollowed out from the inside. Behind the scenes, leaked reports from media insiders suggest that the rift between them has reached a point where even their closest advisors are preparing for the legal fallout. Anonymous sources claiming to belong to their security detail have dropped hints about separate living arrangements within the sprawling Montecito estate, describing a household divided into quiet zones where interaction is kept to a minimum. The image of two soulmates fighting the world together has been replaced by the grim reality of two business partners managing a failing venture while trying to save face. The financial pressure on both of them is immense, with corporate deals falling through, streaming platforms demanding actual content instead of vague promises, and public interest in their personal grievances plummeting to an all-time low. The strain on their dynamic has become unsustainable. Harry, who never had to worry about mortgage payments, security budgets, or commercial ROI in his previous life, finds himself trapped in an endless cycle of monetization just to maintain the luxurious lifestyle his wife demands. The realization that he traded his royal status for a treadmill of commercial obligation has left him exhausted, bitter, and looking for an exit strategy. Public reaction to these latest developments has been swift, brutal, and overwhelmingly unsympathetic toward the Sussex brand. Online forums, social media channels, and commentary shows have been flooded with reactions that range from biting satire to open schadenfreude. The internet has settled into a collective consensus. The fairy tale was fake, the marriage was a transaction, and the bill has finally come due. Commentators who were once neutral are now pointing out the sheer absurdity of their situation. Here is a prince who gave up his family, his military titles, and his public standing, only to end up isolated in a foreign country, allegedly sneaking messages to another woman just to find someone who will listen to him without a camera crew present. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Meanwhile, Meghan's attempts to portray herself as the calm, unbothered victim of media scrutiny are falling flat. Her previous strategy of blaming the royal family, the British press, and public racism for every failure no longer works when the issue is coming from inside her own home. The public sees a woman who orchestrated a global media campaign to elevate herself, only to watch her most important asset, her royal husband, emotionally check out of the agreement. The broader implications for their public brand are catastrophic. Major commercial partners who sign deals with the couple based on their joint star power are reportedly assessing the long-term viability of their contracts. A divided Sussex brand is far less valuable to Hollywood executives than the united front they sold back in 2020. The charity sector is equally uneasy. Organizations that align themselves with Harry and Meghan are wary of being dragged into a messy, public marital fallout that threatens to overshadow their philanthropic missions. As the narrative shifts from royal defiance to cheap tabloid scandal, the couple's elite Hollywood social circle has quietly begun to distance itself. A-list celebrities who once invited them to private gatherings are nowhere to be seen, leaving Meghan to navigate her social calendar with lesser-known influencers and commercial sponsors. The isolation that Harry felt upon arriving in California has now spread to Meghan, as the high society doors she fought so hard to open begin to slide shut in the face of relentless controversy and public ridicule. Every single move they make now is analyzed through the prism of this impending collapse. When Harry steps onto a plane alone, it is seen as an escape. When Meghan attends a gala without her ring, it is read as a statement of defiance. The frantic attempts by their public relations team to put out fires only add fuel to the flames, making them look desperate, disorganized, and reactive. They built an empire on telling their side of the story, but now that the story has turned against them, they have no narrative control left. The public has watched this tragedy unfold in real time over the past few years, and the verdict is already in. No amount of staged appearances, curated Instagram posts, or tearful interviews can repair a union that was built on a foundation of mutual ambition, rather than genuine compatibility. The veil hasn't just been lifted, it has been torn down completely, leaving the world to watch the final chaotic chapters of a modern royal disaster play out in full view. So where does this leave Montecito? And what happens now that the veil has been permanently lifted? The truth is, whether this mystery woman turns out to be the ultimate catalyst for a high-profile legal separation, or simply the final straw in a long-dwindling emotional connection, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have reached a point of absolute non-return. The fairy tale cannot be reconstructed, no matter how many high-priced public relations firms, crisis managers, or strategic image consultants are hired to smooth over the cracks. Harry finds himself trapped in a profound existential dilemma. He is a prince who sacrificed his family, his lifelong friendships, his military honors, and his global standing for a Hollywood vision that has turned utterly bitter and hollow. He now sits in a gilded California mansion, isolated from his roots, deeply homesick, and facing an international public that no longer views him as a romantic rebel who followed his heart, but as a deeply conflicted figure who made a disastrous calculation and is now paying the full price for it. Meghan, on the other hand, is confronting the total loss of her ultimate public asset, which was the carefully managed narrative that she and Harry were an untouchable, unbreakable force capable of taking on the entire world together. Lady C's explosive claims have exposed the massive structural cracks that the Sussex team spent millions attempting to conceal from the global media. The online response, dominated by biting humor, cynicism, and relentless analytical scrutiny, demonstrates that the broader public has completely lost faith in the official story coming out of Montecito. As the rumors continue to gather steam across every commentary channel and tabloid outlet, the pressure inside their inner circle has reached a breaking point. Someone in Montecito is going to have to make the next decisive move, and the world is watching with bated breath to see who blinks first. The legal and financial fallout of a potential formal split would be nothing short of catastrophic for both parties, creating a media circus that would eclipse every previous scandal in modern royal history. For Harry, exiting the marriage means navigating the immensely complex realities of child custody across international borders, security arrangements, and the humiliating prospect of attempting to rebuild bridges with the royal family he spent years publicly attacking. The British public, while sympathetic to his obvious unhappiness, remains deeply hurt by his previous actions, meaning his return to the royal fold would be fraught with tension, strict conditions, and severe public skepticism. He cannot simply walk back into his old life as if the last several years never happened. The institutional trust is shattered, his relationships with his brother and father are hanging by a thread, and his standing among the British public has reached historic lows. For Meghan, a formal divorce or public separation presents an entirely different set of existential threats to her brand. Her global notoriety, her commercial appeal, and her entire media leverage have been inextricably linked to her status as Prince Harry's wife and her continuous connection to the British royal family. Without the royal title and the joint branding that opened doors in elite Hollywood circles, her individual commercial ventures face an uphill battle for long-term relevance. The entertainment industry is notoriously fickle, and as recent streaming cancellations and stalled projects have shown, public interest in personal grievances and lifestyle branding declines rapidly once the initial shock value wears off. Stripped of the unified Sussex banner, her position in the competitive world of American media becomes precarious, leaving her dependent on constant public exposure to maintain her standing. Furthermore, the legal battles over assets, future media rights, and non-disclosure agreements would be brutal and prolonged. The couple has accumulated massive contractual obligations, production deals, and real estate commitments that were structured around their joint identity. Disentangling those financial threads while managing an aggressive public relations campaign would test even the most experienced legal teams. With anonymous sources already leaking details about separate living quarters and private disagreements, the potential for a messy, highly public legal war grows higher with every passing day. The very media apparatus that they used to amplify their grievances against the royal family would inevitably turn its full, unyielding spotlight onto their own legal proceedings, dissecting every court filing, financial statement, and leaked message for public consumption. The broader public narrative has shifted irreversibly from sympathy to deep fascination with the mechanics of their downfall. Audiences who once tuned in to hear their side of the story are now watching with a critical eye, dissecting every public appearance for subtle signs of tension, body language cues, and hidden meanings. Staged public appearances and forced smiles on red carpets no longer convince a skeptical audience that has spent years observing the contrast between their public declarations and their actual behavior. The credibility of their brand has been compromised to such a degree that even genuine philanthropic efforts are routinely dismissed as calculated distraction tactics designed to shift focus away from their personal troubles. This dramatic turn of events serves as a stark cautionary tale about the perils of trading long-term institutional heritage for short-term commercial celebrity. Prince Harry's journey from a beloved, down-to-earth royal prince to an isolated figure navigating the harsh realities of American entertainment branding illustrates the immense cost of his choices. He surrendered the quiet protection and permanent status of the monarchy for a world where his value is determined entirely by public engagement metrics, streaming views, and tabloid headlines. Now that the commercial appeal has frayed and the personal relationship has come under intense strain, he is left with neither the security of his past life nor the freedom he was promised in his new one. As the days progress and further details emerge from media insiders, royal commentators, and investigative figures like Lady C, the momentum behind this story continues to build. The public appetite for the truth behind the polished Montecito facade has never been higher, and every quiet solo trip, separate business announcement, or cryptic comment will continue to be interpreted as further evidence of an impending collapse. The fairy tale that began with a lavish global wedding in 2018 has transformed into a complex,